The plasma bolt missed her head by inches, scorching the metal wall behind her. Zirakai ran through the narrow corridor of the dying station, her 3 daughters clinging to her back beneath the torn fabric of her cloak. The hunters were closing in, their war cries echoing through the abandoned halls like the howls of predators who had finally cornered their prey. She had been running for 6 cycles now, ever since the council declared her an abomination. 3 daughters. 3 living violations of the ancient law that demanded only sons could inherit the stars. Her own people, the Velkari, had turned on her the moment the 3rd girl drew breath. The midwife who delivered them was executed within the hour. Zirakai barely escaped with her life and her children. The station shuddered as another section depressurized somewhere below. This place had been a trading hub once, back when the Outer Rim still had commerce worth protecting. Now it was a graveyard of rusted metal and broken dreams, perfect for hiding but terrible for escaping. She needed a ship, any ship that could break atmosphere and jump to hyperspace before the hunters sealed the system. Her youngest daughter whimpered against her shoulder. Zirakai pressed a hand to the child's head, whispering words of comfort she did not feel. The hunters had brought 3 warships to this forsaken rock, 3 warships for 1 mother and 3 little girls. The council wanted to make an example of her, to show every Velkari female what happened when you defied the natural order. She rounded a corner and froze. The docking bay stretched before her, vast and empty, except for a single vessel at the far end. It was human-made, she could tell from the rough welding and the patchwork hull plating. Humans were rare this far out. But they had a reputation for 2 things: being dangerously unpredictable and not giving a damn about alien politics. Footsteps thundered behind her. She had seconds, at best. Zirakai sprinted across the open bay, her lungs burning. The ship's boarding ramp was down, which meant either the owner was incredibly stupid or incredibly confident. She did not care which. Halfway across the bay, the hunters burst through the doorway behind her, their weapons raised and glowing with lethal energy. She threw herself up the ramp, shouting in broken English, the only human language she knew. "Please! Sanctuary! Children! Please!" A figure emerged from the shadows of the cargo hold, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a jacket that had seen better years, and carrying a rifle that definitely had not. He was human, with dark hair and eyes that assessed the situation in less than a heartbeat. Behind Zirakai, the hunters were raising their weapons. The human did not hesitate. He grabbed her arm, yanked her inside, and slammed his palm against the ramp control. As the metal began to rise, he stepped to the edge and fired 3 precise shots. 2 hunters dropped. The rest scattered for cover. "Strap in," he said in perfect Velkari, which shocked her more than anything else that day. "This is going to get ugly." Part 2. The human's name was Marcus Cole, and he flew like someone who had been born in the pilot seat instead of a planetary hospital. The ship, which he called the Drift Runner, shook and screamed as it tore away from the station with all 3 Velkari warships in immediate pursuit. Zirakai had strapped her daughters into the cargo webbing, and now clung to a support beam as the deck tilted at angles that should not have been possible. "Why do you speak my language?" she shouted over the roar of the engines. Marcus did not look away from the controls, his hands moving across holographic displays with practiced speed. "Spent 5 years working Velkari trade routes. You pick things up." He pulled hard on the stick, sending the ship into a spiral that made her stomach lurch. "More importantly, why are 3 military vessels trying to turn you into cosmic dust?" "I have daughters," Zirakai said simply. For a moment, Marcus's hands stilled. He glanced back at her, his expression unreadable. "That's it? That's the crime?" "Among my people, yes. The council says females weaken the bloodline. Only sons may carry the family name to the stars. I was supposed to terminate them before birth." She looked at her girls, huddled together in the webbing, their large eyes wide with fear. "I could not." Marcus turned back to his controls, but she heard him mutter something in English that sounded extremely vulgar. Well, that's the stupidest thing I've heard all month, and I've been listening to politicians. The ship lurched as an energy blast clipped the rear shields. Warning lights bathed the cockpit in red. Marcus's jaw tightened, and he pushed the engines harder. They were heading for the system's edge, where the gravity well was weak enough to jump to hyperspace. But the warships were faster, cutting off angles, herding them away from escape vectors. They will not stop, Zerakai said quietly. They will hunt us across the galaxy if they must. The Council has declared me corrupted, and my daughter's abominations. There is no negotiation, no mercy. Then they're about to learn something about humans, Marcus said. His fingers danced across a secondary panel, bringing up weapons systems that looked far too advanced for a cargo hauler. We really hate bullies. He threw the drift runner into a sudden reverse thrust, a maneuver that should have torn the ship apart. Instead, it merely screamed in protest as it flipped end over end. The pursuing warships, not expecting such insanity, shot past them. Marcus opened fire the moment their vulnerable engines were exposed. The first warship's drive core erupted in a brilliant cascade of blue fire. The explosion caught the second ship, shearing off its port weapons array and sending it spinning out of control. The third warship tried to break away, but Marcus was already moving, bringing the drift runner around in a tight arc that pulled gravity forces even Zerakai's enhanced physiology struggled to handle. Hold on, Marcus said. Which was when Zerakai realized things were about to get worse. He fired the main cannon. Not at the warship, but at a massive chunk of station debris floating nearby. The debris exploded outward in a cloud of shrapnel moving at lethal velocity. The warship's shields lit up like a festival as thousands of metal fragments peppered its hull. The shields held, but they were draining fast, flickering under the sustained assault. Marcus did not give them time to recover. He pushed the drift runner straight toward the debris cloud, using it as cover while he closed the distance. The Velkari captain, realizing too late what was happening, tried to bring the warship about. But cargo ships were small and nimble. Warships were not. The drift runner burst from the debris cloud less than 100 meters from the warship's bridge. Marcus fired everything he had. Missiles, cannons, and what looked suspiciously like mining charges all slammed into the same section of hull. The warship's shields collapsed, and its bridge disappeared in a flower of flame and escaping atmosphere. Then they were past, racing for the system's edge, while the dying warship tumbled behind them. Marcus pulled up the hyperspace calculations, his eyes scanning the numbers with the intensity of someone who knew that one mistake meant death. 30 seconds to jump range, he said. Anyone else feeling lucky today? Zerakai looked back at her daughters. They were crying, but they were alive. That was more than she had dared hope for when she woke up this morning. Why are you helping us? She asked. You don't know me. You owe me nothing. Marcus glanced at her again, and this time she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Not pity, not even sympathy, just a bone-deep anger at injustice. I've got a daughter too, he said quietly. Back on Earth. Haven't seen her in 3 years because her mother thinks I'm too dangerous to be around. Apps. Bither. He laughed. But there was no humor in it. Maybe she's right. But I know what it means to be kept from your kids, and I know what I'd do to anyone who tried to hurt them. His hands moved across the controls, finalizing the jump calculations. So yeah, I'm helping you. And anyone who has a problem with that can kiss the business end of my cannon. The hyperspace drive hummed to life, building toward the critical threshold. 10 seconds. 5. The remaining damaged warship was trying to pursue, but it was too slow, too hurt. The universe twisted, colors bleeding into impossible spectrums, as the drift runner punched through reality and into the howling chaos of hyperspace. When normal space reasserted itself, they were 17 light-years away and utterly alone. Marcus slumped in his chair, exhaustion finally catching up with adrenaline. Well? he said. That was fun. Now we just have to figure out where to go that the Valkyrie Council won't find you. He looked at Zirakai, and his expression was serious. Fair warning, though. Once we figure that out, you're going to have some decisions to make about your future. Part 3. They jumped through 6 systems in 3 days, never staying longer than it took to refuel and resupply. Marcus knew the Outer Rim like most people knew their own homes, navigating through dead zones and uncharted space where the major governments had no jurisdiction, and the law was whatever you could enforce with your own guns. Zirakai watched him work with growing fascination. Humans were supposed to be weak, short-lived creatures who had only recently stumbled onto the galactic stage. The major species regarded them with a mixture of amusement and concern, like children who had found their parents' weapons locker. But Marcus moved through this dangerous frontier like he owned it, making deals with pirates and information brokers, with the casual confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose. Her daughters had taken to him immediately, which surprised her. The youngest, Sora, had stopped crying within hours of leaving the Valkyrie system. Now she followed Marcus around the ship, asking endless questions about human culture and technology in her broken but improving English. The older two, Kira and Nessa, were more reserved, but Zirakai caught them watching Marcus with the same cautious hope she felt growing in her own chest. On the 4th day, Marcus called her to the cockpit. He had spread a holographic star chart across the main display. Dozens of systems highlighted in different colors. Red is Valkyrie territory, or Allied space, he explained, gesturing at roughly a third of the map. Yellow is neutral but monitored. They've got bounty on you. And word spreads fast out here. Green is where we might have a shot. Zirakai studied the map. The green zones were few and scattered, mostly fringe colonies and independent stations operating outside the major trade lanes. These places are lawless, she said. Dangerous. End quote. She said. Everywhere's dangerous for you right now, Marcus countered. At least in these places, people don't care about Valkyrie politics. You could disappear, start over. He zoomed in on a particular system. This one's called Sanctuary Point. It's a human colony. About 8,000 people. Far enough from major lanes that the council won't bother looking there. A human colony, Zirakai repeated slowly. Your people would accept us. Marcus hesitated, and she appreciated his honesty. Some would, some wouldn't. Humans are complicated that way. But the governor of Sanctuary Point is a woman named Helen Cruz. She's tough, fair, and she really doesn't like people who hurt kids. He looked at Zirakai directly. I can get you there safely. After that, you'd be on your own. I can't stay. The words stung more than Zirakai wanted to admit. In just 4 days, Marcus Cole had become the first person in her adult life she could rely on. The first who had not looked at her daughters with disgust or pity. Why not? Because I've got enemies too, Marcus said quietly. Different kind than yours, but just as determined. I stay in one place too long. People I care about get hurt. He ran a hand through his hair. A gesture she had learned meant he was uncomfortable. Trust me, it's better if I drop you somewhere safe and keep moving. Before Zirakai could respond, an alarm shrieked through the ship. Marcus spun to the controls, his casual demeanor evaporating instantly. We've got company. Big company. The sensor display lit up with contacts. Not 3 ships this time. 12. Valkyrie hunters. Spread in a search pattern that had somehow predicted their route through hyperspace. How did they find us? Zirakai breathed. Marcus's face had gone cold and hard. Because someone told them. Someone we bought fuel from, or supplies, or information. He was already plotting jump coordinates. But Zirakai could see the problem. They were too deep in the gravity well. They needed at least 10 minutes to reach safe jump range. The hunters would be on them in 5. Take the girls, Marcus said. Get to the escape pod. No. Zirakai moved to the weapons station without asking permission. I will not leave you. To die alone. I'm not going to die. I'm going to hold them off long enough for you to escape. You cannot fight 12 warships. Watch me. But Zera-Kai was already strapping into the gunner's seat, her hands finding the controls with instinctive ease. Velkari were bred for war. Even the females the council deemed worthless. She had trained in combat since childhood, before they told her that her only value was producing sons. Marcus stared at her for a moment. Then his mouth quirked in something that might have been a smile. You know how to shoot? Better than you fly, Zera-Kai said, which was probably not true but felt good to say. Marcus laughed, genuinely laughed, and suddenly the terrible odds did not seem quite so impossible. All right then. Let's show these bastards what happens when they hunt the wrong family. The Velkari hunters came in fast and aggressive, expecting easy prey. They found something else entirely. The drift runner might have looked like a battered cargo hauler, but Marcus had spent years modifying it, adding weapons and shields that would make a military frigate jealous. And with Zera-Kai on the guns, they became something the hunters had never faced before. A human and a Velkari, fighting together as equals. The first hunter to close range took a missile salvo that Marcus fired with surgical timing, right as Zera-Kai shredded its shields with sustained cannon fire. It tried to break away but exploded before it could complete the turn. The second hunter learned from the first's mistake and stayed at range, but Zera-Kai adjusted her targeting, leading the shots with the precision of someone who understood Velkari tactics from the inside. Left vector, high, she called, and Marcus rolled the ship, dodging a spread of torpedoes that would have gutted them. Coming around, give me cover, Marcus said. And Zera-Kai switched to point defense, shooting down missiles and fighters with rhythmic bursts. They danced through space like that. Two minds, working as one. Anticipating and reacting faster than any single pilot could manage. But 12-1 was still 12-1, and slowly, inevitably, the hunters were boxing them in. A blast hit their rear shields, and the ship shuddered. Warning lights cascaded across the displays. Another hit like that, and they were done. 40 seconds to jump range, Marcus said through gritted teeth. Zera-Kai saw the hunter lining up for the killing shot. She saw her daughters in the cargo hold, holding each other, and believing in a future their mother had promised them. She saw Marcus Cole, a human who had risked everything for strangers, because it was the right thing to do. And she made a choice. Part 4. Zera-Kai fired every remaining weapon at once, overloading the power systems and routing everything through the main cannon. The beam that erupted from the drift runner was not something a ship this size should have been able to produce. It carved through space like a blade of pure light, striking the lead hunter dead center. The warship simply ceased to exist. Its shields and armor meaningless against that much concentrated energy. The blast continued through, clipping 2 more hunters, and sending them spinning away with catastrophic damage. Then the drift runner's power core shut down entirely, all systems going dark except for life support, and the hyperspace drive still counting down to jump threshold. They were dead in space, defenseless, with 8 hunters still closing in for the kill. But they had bought seconds. Precious seconds. Come on, Marcus whispered, watching the jump timer tick down. 20 seconds. 15. The hunters opened fire. Dozens of weapons blazing. Without shields. Without engines. The drift runner could not dodge. Zera-Kai grabbed Marcus's hand, not speaking, not needing to. If they died here, at least they died fighting. 10 seconds. The first barrage hit, tearing through the hull plating. Alarms screamed. The ship began to shake itself apart. 5 seconds. Zera-Kai closed her eyes and thought of her daughters, hoping they would remember their mother as someone who never gave up, who fought for them until the very end. The universe twisted sideways, reality folding in on itself as the hyperspace drive activated 1 microsecond before the next barrage would have vaporized them. The hunter's weapons struck empty space where the drift runner had been, and then the cargo ship was gone, hurtling through the impossible dimensions between stars. Marcus slumped in his chair, his hand still gripping Zera-Kai's. "We're alive," he said, like he could not quite believe it. "We are alive?" Zerakai agreed. And then she started laughing, wild and uncontrolled. The kind of laughter that comes when death has missed you by the width of a heartbeat. Her daughters came running from the cargo hold, and Zerakai swept them into her arms, holding them tight while they cried and laughed and asked 1,000 questions. Marcus gave them space, busying himself with damage reports and trying to restore power to the ship's primary systems. When the chaos finally settled, Zerakai found him in the engine room, welding a patch over a hull breach. He looked exhausted, covered in grease and sweat. But there was satisfaction in his eyes. "That trick with the weapons," he said without looking up. "Where did you learn that?" "I did not learn it. I improvised." Zerakai picked up a tool and began helping with the repairs, her hands as steady as his. "Among my people, females are forbidden from military training, but my father was a shipmaster. He taught me everything in secret, before the council found out and killed him for it." Marcus stopped welding. "They killed him for teaching you? For defying their laws?" "Yes." He believed all Velkari should have the chance to reach their potential, regardless of gender. The council called it corruption. She secured a panel, her movements mechanical. "I was 12 years old when they executed him in the central square. I watched because they made me. They wanted me to understand the price of defiance." For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then, quietly, "I'm sorry. That's not justice. That's just cruelty dressed up in fancy words." "Yes," Zerakai said. "It is." They worked in silence after that, repairing the ship piece by piece. It took them 6 hours to get the drift runner back to something resembling functional. The hyperspace jump had brought them to an empty system, nothing but asteroids and dead planets. But at least they were safe for now. Marcus checked their position and then turned to face Zerakai fully. "We need to talk about what happens next." "You will take us to the human colony," Zerakai said. "To Sanctuary Point." That was the plan. Yeah. But things have changed. Marcus pulled up a data feed, showing intercepts he had been monitoring. "The council has escalated. They're not just hunting you anymore. They've declared you an enemy of the state and put a bounty on you that's high enough to make every merc and hunter in 3 sectors come running." Zerakai felt cold. "How much?" 5 million credits, dead or alive, but they're paying double if you're brought in breathing." Marcus's expression was grim. "And there's more. They've started pressuring the human government, demanding we hand you over if you're found in our territory. They're threatening trade sanctions, treaty violations, all kinds of political pressure. Then I cannot go to Sanctuary Point," Zerakai said slowly. "I would bring disaster to your people." "Maybe." Marcus crossed his arms. "Or maybe there's another option." "What option?" "You stop running. You stop hiding." Marcus met her eyes, and there was something fierce in his gaze. Zerakai stared at him. "Fight back? Against the entire Velkari Council? That is insane." "Probably," Marcus agreed. "But hear me out. You're not the only Velkari female who's suffered under these laws. There have to be others. Women who've been forced to terminate daughters, who've been denied opportunities because of their gender. What if you became a symbol for them? What if instead of one mother running from hunters, you became the leader of a resistance?" "I am no leader," Zerakai protested. "I am a mother, trying to protect her children. And that's exactly why you'd be perfect," Marcus said. "Because you're not doing this for power or glory. You're doing it because it's right. People follow that. People believe in that." Zerakai wanted to argue, to explain why it could never work. Why she was not the person he thought she was. But then she thought about her father, dying because he believed Velkari society could be better. She thought about every female child who had been terminated before drawing breath. She thought about her daughters and what kind of universe they would grow up in. "If I do this," she said slowly, "if I truly fight back, the council will never stop hunting me. They will send everything they have." Marcus grinned, and it was not a nice expression. "Good. Let them come. We'll be ready." "We?" Zerakai asked. "You're going to need help." Weapons, supplies, people who can fight. I know some folks who owe me favors, and I know a lot more who hate bullies as much as I do. Marcus extended his hand. I'm in if you are. Zerakai looked at his hand, then at her daughters watching from the doorway, then back at Marcus. She thought about running forever, always afraid, teaching her girls to hide their true selves. She thought about her father's dream of a better Velkari society. She took Marcus's hand. Then we fight. Part 5. Word spread faster than Zerakai had anticipated. Marcus put out careful feelers through his network of contacts, bounty hunters and smugglers and independent traders who operated in the gray zones between law and chaos. He told them about a Velkari mother fighting for her right to raise daughters, about a corrupt council that executed anyone who disagreed with their twisted laws. He did not ask for help directly. Marcus was too smart for that. He just told the story and let people make their own choices. Within 2 weeks, ships started arriving at their rendezvous coordinates. A dozen at first, then 20, then 50. They were not military vessels. They were cargo haulers and mining ships, pleasure yachts, and converted passenger liners. But every one of them was armed. And every one of them was crewed by people who had decided they were tired of watching injustice go unchallenged. Humans mostly, but not exclusively. Zerakai met species from across the galaxy who had their own grievances against the Velkari Council, or simply believed in the cause. An elderly Thorian shipmaster who had lost his granddaughter to council raiders. A pair of Shen twins, whose homeworld had been devastated by Velkari military expansion. A human woman named Helen Cruz, the governor Marcus had mentioned, who showed up personally with 3 ships full of colonists ready to fight. They gathered in the shadow of a gas giant. A ragtag fleet that should not have worked, but somehow did. Marcus organized them with the efficiency of someone who had commanded larger operations before, dividing ships into squadrons and establishing communication protocols. Zerakai found herself thrust into a leadership role she had never wanted, speaking to crews and making decisions that affected hundreds of lives. Her daughters thrived in the chaos. Sora appointed herself the fleet's unofficial diplomat. Charming, hard-bitten mercenaries, with her questions and infectious enthusiasm. Kira and Nessa helped with supply logistics, their quick minds perfect for tracking resources across dozens of ships. Watching them flourish, seeing them unafraid for the first time in their lives, Zerakai knew she had made the right choice. The Council's response was predictable. They sent a battle fleet, 30 warships strong, to crush the rebellion before it could truly begin. They arrived at the gas giant expecting to find a handful of desperate refugees. Instead, they found an ambush. Zerakai had planned it personally, using her knowledge of Velkari tactics against them. The fleet's warships entered the system spread out, confident in their superiority, not expecting coordinated resistance. When they reached the gas giant, the ragtag fleet erupted from its shadow, not running but attacking with everything they had. It was chaos. Beautiful and terrible. Marcus led the first squadron. His drift runner, somehow keeping pace with ships twice its size. Helen Cruz commanded the second, her colonist vessels fighting with the desperation of people defending their right to exist. Zerakai herself took the weapons station on a converted freighter, calling out targeting solutions and weak points in Velkari shields that only someone raised in their culture would know. The Council's fleet had superior firepower and training, but Zerakai's people had something more valuable. They had a reason to fight beyond duty or honor. They were fighting for a universe where daughters mattered, where people could make their own choices about their lives and their children. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 6 Council warships were destroyed. Twice that many were crippled and retreating, and the ragtag fleet remained in control of the system. They had lost ships too, good people who had given everything for the cause. But they had proven something vital. They could win. News of the victory spread through the outer rim like wildfire. More ships joined their fleet. More stories emerged of Velkari females who had suffered under Council laws, who saw in Zerakai a chance for change. The Council sent more hunters, more warships, more threats. Each time, the fleet was ready. Each time, they fought back. 6 months after fleeing the Velkari homeworld with 3 daughters and nothing else, Zerakai stood on the bridge of a captured council cruiser. Now the flagship of what people were calling the Liberation Fleet. 50 ships surrounded her, with more arriving every day. Intelligence reports suggested that unrest was spreading even to the Velkari core worlds, with females demanding rights and males questioning the council's absolute authority. Marcus found her there, looking out at the stars. "You've started a revolution," he said quietly. "We started a revolution," Zerakai corrected. "I could not have done this alone. Maybe. But you're the one they follow. You're the one the council fears." Marcus smiled. "Some of the crews have started calling you the Empress. Empress of the Free Velkari." Zerakai laughed. "I am no Empress. I am a mother who refused to kill her children. That's what makes you perfect for it," Marcus said. He hesitated, then added, "I have to leave soon. There's something I need to take care of back in human space." Zerakai felt her heart clench. She had known this moment would come eventually, had prepared herself for it, but it still hurt. "Your daughter?" "Yeah. Her mother contacted me last week. Apparently watching you fight for your kids made her reconsider some things." Marcus looked both hopeful and terrified. "She wants to talk about custody arrangements." "Then you must go," Zerakai said firmly. "Your daughter needs her father." "I'll come back," Marcus promised. "When things are settled, when I've got my life sorted, I'll come back. If you'll have me." Zerakai turned to face him fully. "Marcus Cole, you saved my life, and the lives of my daughters. You helped me become someone I never dreamed I could be. You will always have a place with us, for as long as you want it." He smiled, and it transformed his face from hardened warrior to something gentler. "Your people are really calling you an empress, you know. The council's propaganda is trying to paint you as a tyrant, but that's just making more people join your cause. Let them call me what they wish," Zerakai said. "Empress, rebel, abomination. It does not matter. What matters is that my daughters will grow up in a universe where they are valued for who they are, not condemned for being born female." "I see." Marcus pulled her into a brief embrace. "You're going to change your entire civilization, you know that? The Velkari will never be the same after you're done with them." "Good," Zerakai said. "They need changing." He left the next day, taking the drift runner and a small escort out of the system. Zerakai watched him go from the bridge, her daughters beside her. Sora waved at the departing ship until it jumped to hyperspace and vanished. "Will he really come back?" Kira asked quietly. "Yes," Zerakai said, surprised by her own certainty. "He will come back, and he would find them ready." The Liberation Fleet was growing stronger every day, liberating Velkari females and sympathetic males from council control, establishing safe havens where the old laws did not apply. The council would fight them, would try to crush this rebellion with everything they had, but Zerakai was no longer the desperate mother fleeing through a dying station. She was a leader now, a symbol of resistance, a promise that change was possible. Her daughters stood beside her on the bridge of a warship, free and unafraid, proof that defying the council's cruelty could lead to something better. The war was far from over. It might take years, decades even, to truly reform Velkari society. But for the first time since her father's execution, Zerakai believed it was possible. She believed in a future where her daughters and their daughters after them would never know the fear she had lived with. A junior officer approached with a status report. 3 more ships had just jumped into the system, refugees from a council colony seeking asylum. Zerakai gave orders to welcome them, to feed them, and find them positions in the fleet if they wanted to fight. She looked out at the stars again, at the fleet that had formed around one mother's desperate need to protect her children. The crews really were calling her Empress now. She could hear it in their voices, see it in how they looked at her. Not Empress in the old sense of absolute authority and hereditary power, but something new. Empress of those who refuse to accept injustice. Empress of daughters who deserve to live. Let the council tremble, Zerakai thought. Let them send their hunters and their warships. She would be waiting, and she would never stop fighting. Not for herself, but for every female child who deserved a chance to reach for the stars. Her youngest daughter tugged on her sleeve. Mother, what happens next? Zerakai smiled and pulled Sora close. Next, we continue forward. We fight, we grow stronger, and we build something better. Something your children will be proud to inherit. And Marcus will come back? Sora asked. Yes, Zerakai promised. He will come back, and when he does, he will find us victorious. The bridge crew returned to their duties, preparing for whatever came next. Outside the viewports, the Liberation Fleet waited, ready to write a new chapter in Velkari history. A chapter where mothers protected their daughters, where humans and aliens fought side by side for justice, where an outcast became an empress, not through conquest, but through courage, where one woman's refusal to surrender to cruelty sparked a fire that would reshape an entire civilization. The story was far from over, but this chapter had a good ending. Zerakai stood tall on her bridge, her daughters safe beside her, her fleet strong around her, and hope burning bright in her chest like a star that would never fade.